So Vincent, can you tell me in which disciplines you work as an artist and how do you see them relating or feeding into each other?
Well, my main discipline now is etching, and I'm working with greener etch, which is environmentally friendly. So it's health-wise, it makes a lot of sense. So it's not with the very toxic acids we used to use, although they're still used, with great caution and protective masks and so on. But the greener etch, I like it. I work a lot in aluminium, and the aluminium has a certain spontaneity that I like. It's not always predictable, so it can go in one or other direction, which I found that interesting. But going back in time, because I began by just working on with doodles and almost like sketching at school when you should have been listening to the teacher teaching geography or something, but and making small drawings, and did quite a bit of watercolors as a younger person, and some tried oils, acrylics, messed around with everything. Did a bit of sculpture in college, and what else did we do? Pen and ink drawing. I think my first was just a scraper board thing of a crow. So already the crow thing was in my memory bank. So and I made one lithograph. I don't think it's here, but one lithograph. Well, that's here actually. I can show it to you. I made it in collaboration with a Russian guy, George Maslov, who was working in Canada, and he was a great technician, and really enjoyed that, but I drifted back to etching. And well, I did also make prints on, I don't have any here, but I made prints on polystyrene. So that's like a wood block, but the polystyrene, as you know, is the stuff you insulate the walls of the building. Yes. And it's usually blue, and it looks like cheddar cheese. And you can dig into that, or scratch into it, or just make a tiny dent. It's malleable, but it's pretty tough at the same time. You roll it up like a wood block, and I did that at Cape Dorset with the Inuit people, and it was very funny because here I was arriving bringing this very strange material into the Arctic environment, because they were printing on stone carving, stone block, a bit like lithography. But that was interesting. I really enjoyed that.
So would you say your practice is then quite experimental?
It has been, yeah. It has been, yeah. I suppose I've tried a fair few things, but I drift back to etching. And as I say, I tried painting. Painting is not easy, and it's not easy for me. I find it's not easy for me anyway to change tack, to put down the cello and then start playing piano, and then take up the woodwind and play that as well, and all over the shop, And it does, it's a bit like fitness. If you keep doing the wood block or the cello, in the case of music, of course you'll get better and better. But chopping and changing, I find it's not easy, so I drift back to etching and sketching and making these dots, which you'll see a lot of in the next hour or so.
And what is it about the medium of etching that you're so drawn to?
I think I like the it's very tactile, so you're actually working. You're like a woodworker. So you have these implements, the scraper implements. You use resin powder to make an accutint. You're always kind of rubbing and scratching, a bit like metalwork. And I look back into my family history, and there's metalwork in my genes, if you like, because some of my ancestors were both blacksmiths and whitesmiths. I believe whitesmiths they work with silver or something. So I do like that tactile making things, quite like cooking. Your hands are always working all the time. You're making, you're molding. And then, of course, I also love the spontaneous result, or lack of result sometimes, that you get. You want to plan to put down a certain colour, make certain marks on the plate, or have, like this group of birds have so many on the plate. And then something different, the greener etch doesn't bite as well, and it does a foul bite on one side. But that's great, I didn't think of that. So, the etching is a journey. You're planning to get from A to B. You have an idea roughly in your head that this is what it's going to be like. These are the colours. I have 1 plate, 2 plates, 3 plates. I never go beyond 3 plates. Some people go up to 10 plates. But, and then on the way you can sort of say, wow, look at that surprise, I didn't expect that dark corner there. So he said, that's like taking a side road. It's like going down the country and saying, there's a lane there, I wonder what's down at the end of that there. So that's part of the journey, which I like, the little spontaneity, the surprises.
Okay, well, we are talking about the different making techniques, and especially etching. We recently started doing digital prints as well.
Yes.
So what is the difference between etching and digital print, and how you do it, and what do those two processes do for you as an artist?
Well, I suppose, first of all, I went back to do a multimedia degree in DIT, and when people mentioned video, my eyes glazed over. So I was resisting and staying with traditional printing, as a lot of people do. They say, "Oh, digital! Oh, don't talk to me about that." But after a while, I was obviously doing some etching there, and I got out. I was doing a project. I went out to the Bog of Allen, and I was doing a project with just the landscape, the bareness of the landscape. I tried the natural bog, the non-cutaway pristine bog. It was lovely, gorgeous, but there wasn't much happening. I felt it was like in the middle of a big green field. There wasn't much action. So I kept walking, and then I ended up in where the cutaway bog was. And I don't like harvesting of dirt, but this is amazing because this landscape was all marked like an etching plate. It was gouged and cut, and there were lines and a lot of, in this case, mechanical, gouging of the landscape. But it looked great. I started photographing it, and then of course I drifted. Oh, maybe I'll make a video out of this. And then I made other work of. While out there, I videoed the big sort of drills of turf. There were quite a mound of turf as high as the ceiling here. And this is turf mould, and they dry it out, but they cover it in plastic. And the plastic was billowing in the wind, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So, to answer your question, I found another eye. This was like a third eye that I was sort of covering over. Oh, video, what's that? So I can, I'm not losing my etching techniques, but I was adding another way of looking.
I see.
And I really got fired up by it, and I did a whole series on the bogs, and I think it did quite well in the end. But and I drift back to that from time to time, and you'll see it in the digital prints. I'll show you one or two later on. We can hold them up and have a quick look. But so yeah, they both work together. And you can refer back or one. Now I wouldn't, or I'd never sort of project an image onto the wall and then just draw it. It's not that direct, but it's another way of looking. You can stop, go, and you see shapes, particularly my starlings, that you couldn't see with the naked eye.
Okay.
It's all happening so fast, so it feeds in that way. It's exciting, keeps your interest up. It's great, yeah.
And you mentioned starlings there. So I noticed that nature, and especially birds, continue to be source of inspiration for your work. So can you tell me about it, and how did you develop this interest, and why nature and birds?
Good question. Well, as a boy, I was raised on a farm in County Kildare, which is about 30 miles from here. And in the morning, I do have this memory, which only came to recently, that I used to get up maybe in summertime, 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, and the corn crake could be craking outside, waking you up anyhow at cockcrow, and I'd wander off into the fields, as a young boy. And I had no binoculars, but I just strolled and observed, and I love that sort of being out in nature, looking. Maybe nothing happening, but that's also interesting. If nothing is there, the absence of something is also interesting. So that's kind of grew up with that. And my parents were they were busy farming, but they were very much into nature. We used to make a big fuss about what we used to call the bell ringing things of the season. So the first cuckoo was always celebrated. Oh, I heard the cuckoo. Did you hear the cuckoo? So there's a kind of folklore thing which I liked. Or the migration of the geese, so that was saying, oh gosh, it's spring now, it's great, or it's autumn, oh, the winter can't be far away. So that kind of, I was very much part of it. Now I remember we used to, as kids, throw stones at birds and do all sorts of nasty things as children do. So that's a blot on my copybook. But then and my father used to shoot, vermin, and then he would shoot pheasants and rabbits and things. So we sort of fed off the land as well. So it was kind of a nice mix of at first admiring the joys of nature and imitating the birds, and then sort of going out and shooting a pheasant and eating it. But that's farming life, and that was life in the countryside. So I continued with that, and then I eventually grew up, if you can say, got a pair of binoculars and joined Birdwatch Ireland, and I was heavily involved in that, and just again out in nature all the time, and travelling a lot more, going to bird reserves, and then of course discovering, not that there hadn't been discovered before, but meeting these interacting with the starling flocks and the crows. I'll hold this one up for you. And a lot of my work is about it's how birds behave and how birds, what their survival values are, how they integrate, how the groupy thing about birds and the collective thing about birds. This is what it's called. So I'm a sort of poking fun at, and it's not always fun, but it can be very serious too, about the groupiness of people or birds or animals, and the survival value. This one's called hierarchy. So within this group, you will see, if you look closely, you will see that you pick out a dominant rook, and then the subordinate rooks, and then probably the ones that are even more subordinate, and they survive by a leadership, and then more subordinate members around them. But if you go to attack a group of groups, they're all together. Then they're not. They come as a group and defend themselves.
Sure.
So I like that about nature, how nature as a collective, because it's tough out in nature. They have to survive. This is called Exodus. It's based a bit on the ill treatment of people, I think, in the war in Bosnia or somewhere. It's like people being driven out of their city. But the crows also get a hard time from farmers or whoever who says, "Oh, I hate crows, I'm going to shoot them." So the rooks nest in rookeries, so it's a groupy thing. So it's, a lot of my work is about behaviour and animal behaviour and how it feeds in. There's a kind of and the folklore around it. I think is very interesting.
Yes, in your statement you talk about deeply rooted patterns of instinct and musical aspects of your work, especially in relation to your works depicting murmurations. So can you tell us more about that?
Well, again, it's the patterns that the birds, the patterns and the energy. I'm not sure what I meant by the musical at the time, but I'm sure I was likening to some piece of music maybe, and almost like Stravinsky, all that kind of drama, that energy, the powerful boom, 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 and then it quietens away. So the starlings are the big groups of starlings, the big murmurations are like that. There's a lot of action, a lot of explosive power, and then suddenly it quietens down, and then they turn another way to the side, and you don't see them. So they're with you and they're not with you. It's hit and miss, and of course the music. I thought of the rhythms of the movements, which they still can't figure out how maybe 500,000 starlings get into a big rolling wave, like a big piece of music, and how they don't. There's never a car crash. Why is that? Now, okay, we can agree they travel much faster than we do, but if you walk out the street now in Temple Bar, wherever, you could come around the corner and bump into somebody. Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. But it doesn't happen. And if the birds crashed up there, they just fall down, wing damage or whatever. So I think the scientists really haven't discovered there is a 7-bird theory. I look at 7 birds around me, but try that coming out of Crow Park or somewhere, and you're going to be shouldered from left to right. So it's interesting, and I like the idea that it hasn't quite hasn't been quite solved yet. And I do like the energy of the group, and it's outdoor, and it's like a ballet in the sky, and it's very, very dramatic. If you have you seen it yourself?
I've seen your videos.
Yeah, the videos.
Yes.
Well, we might show a clip in the presentation, but you have in the wild. It's very, very dramatic. So again, it's like, I suppose, going to. Is it like going to an opera or something, or an open air event where there's music? It could be rock and roll, or it could be anything else. And you're drawn in, and you're in motion with the music, or indeed with the words in this case. And maybe I'll show some motion here, will I?
Yes, that would be great.
In the starlings, we'll show some clips on the video. And this is where I use the motion of the birds. The birds are quite, I suppose, stylized, and they look quite still, but of course they can move very still. It's very dramatic. And this one here, more of an evening scene, and that's taken out of the bog in Derry. So the backdrop is the bog. So what I've done here is this unusual, I suppose. I've painted on big sheets of plastic, like polytunnel plastic. Dot, dot, dot. All the birds are, all the patterns are painted on the plastic. So it's a see-through. It's not absolutely clear. And then I took the sheets of plastic, which were as long as the room here, like flags, and I put them out, staked them out into the bog, and in windy weather, and as the sun moved around, and the plastic was rolling like a murmuration, and it was also picking up light, which was very spontaneous, and there was all sorts of reds and greens and like a rainbow light in it, and I was videoing that and photographing that. So here I am, sort of bringing video again. After resisting it for so long, bringing video into an image of that, and I'm using, this is kind of a multimedia, so I'm using the camera, and I've already made the drawings of the birds in the plastic. I'm setting it up in the landscape, and I'm using the nature of the sun or the light to feed into my video piece or my stills or whatever, and there I go. Yeah, and the results were, I was delighted with the results.
The last two prints you just showed us, they're from your Mirage series.
The Mirage series,
and they're digital prints.
They're digitally printed, but there's painting. The birds are painted, so it's a mixed media, strictly speaking.
Yes.
The plastic is the plastic. It's hanging in the middle between you, the camera, and the backdrop, the landscape. And what else can I say about it? And it could be a video still. These are actually individual photographs of the plastic, the landscape, and all that I've just described. Yeah. And there was a couple of other we have the video stills here at the background. So these are clips from a short, 3-minute video, I think, of the murmuration, all the different shapes. I like this hammerhead shape. There's a whale here. You can see the fin. Other lumps, and this is like, I don't know, it's like a seal or something, or a dog. And what have they got here? Oh yeah, they have crows, yeah. And this is called, just to mention crows, anticipation. So it just shows about the birds are one step ahead of us all the time. So when the earth starts to disintegrate or whatever, these birds will be organised and they're ready. Where's the opportunity?
Right.
So they're organised, they're ready, have anticipated.
Is the love for the nature that you have the reason why you've moved to more sustainable way of printmaking? You were talking about the greener way of etching.
Yeah, I think it was, and also for I like to keep fit and healthy, so I was reading a lot of serious papers on nitric acid and ferric acid and what it can do to your system. So yeah, it's all of that and more, just to try and keep away from keep clean living as much as a clean and working environment, which makes sense. But I know that the studio has, when we use the nitric or ferric, there's terrific air conditioning in the place, and it's all sort of, all the fumes are sucked out and all that. But still, it's the right way to go. I think it's a bit like trying not to use your diesel engine, maybe go electric or whatever it is, not to burn coal and so on. So there's also more talk about it. There's more emphasis in the studio about health and safety, and in the present condition where we are now, it makes a lot of sense to work in a clean environment. Everybody wins.
Mm. And can you tell me, how have you been coping through COVID and through lockdown as a printmaker without a studio?
Well, yeah, indeed, how it is COVID. For a while, the first lockdown was last spring and the weather was amazing, so I haven't done so much gardening in all my life. But I didn't feel any drive to go out and start some new project. I think we were all kind of ambushed. So I felt I was quieter, and maybe, of course, everybody, including myself, tidied the house again and again and again, and chucked out all the old stuff. It was time to regroup and start all over again. But coming into summer, I got going. I have a studio space in Mountain Square, so I got going drawing. I'm still drawing the starlings, but I'm kind of stylizing the pieces a bit more. Mm. And again, we might be able to show a couple of drawings, but I really enjoyed that. So it was more sort of making lots of dots, but in sort of imitating the patterns and see could I loosen them up or make them flow a bit better. Maybe we're back to what your question about music again, but I still listen to Stravinsky again. But I really enjoyed that, and I'm using the other thing my drawings are much bigger, so I'm going about 4 times that size on lovely big sheets of paper. So that kept me going over the autumn and over the winter period. So hopefully I'll be showing those next spring.
Mm. Is that what you're working on at the moment?
Yeah.
A series of drawings? Yeah,
mostly drawings. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now some of the drawings will become etchings, because once I have a drawing that's your template, if you like, so I can transfer those onto the plate and add to them or take away from them. So some will definitely it'll be a mix. Mm-hmm. There'll be some drawings, but again, I'm sure there'll be mostly etchings back to the old habits again. Mm. Yeah.
So in terms of your practice and your work going forward, you'll obviously continue doing etchings. Do you see yourself continuing with digital work as well?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. I like when it mixes up a little bit. Yeah, it's good because it produces lots of surprises. Some failures, needless to say, that are thrown out. But yeah, it's a way to go because it is there. It's almost like the mobile phone. Why wouldn't you use it? I wouldn't overuse it, but I certainly use it. Like, as I said earlier, a third eye, another way of seeing, or another way of manipulating something, provided it's still in limited edition and it's not all over the place. Or if it is, it can be multiples, but you have to state clearly what it is and how it's done in multimedia. So, yeah, I enjoy it, and it's as I say, another way of looking at ads, because you have to keep yourself stimulated. And I love still go out into nature all the time. Yeah. Mm. The winter, still chasing the starlings. They must know me now, or just being outdoors. It's lovely to see something different every time.
Do you think it's possible to exhaust your source of inspiration, nature? No,
don't think so. Not in nature. No, I'd say nature might exhaust me, all right, but I don't think it's going the other way around. Because nature is changing now, and I love this whole idea of slowly but surely re-greening, and reinventing ourselves, just going back and letting nature be rather than spraying it and digging it up. Clipping every blade of grass. Where I live now, there's a guy, I'm near a football field, and the guy's, just cutting the lawn 3 times in 2 weeks, and it's mad. There's hardly any grass growing. It's just, all these things, people need not mow their lawns. At least they can put in rewild, put in a strip of. They've done a couple of places near the Botanic Gardens there. It's lovely. There's a strip of wildflowers, and then there's a little pathway cut through it. Kids run through it. It's great. So I think we're getting there, and maybe hope it's not too late. But yeah, I won't tire of nature.
Okay, well, Vincent, is there anything else you would like to talk us through, or any more works you'd like to show us? explain.
No, have I got some of these here? And of course, you will be showing some of the clips. But this is what I did. Of course, yes, I shouldn't know. It's not just starlings. I'm involved in a swift conservation project at the minute. Have been for a few years, but these are the birds that come from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
They're not swallows now. They're like swallows, but this print is called Vortex, so it's part of that project. And this is done with the gum arabic, which is painted freehand, painted onto a aluminium plate, mm-hmm. and it's then allowed to dry, and then the place is heated up with water, and the place is coated with a bitumen type substance, and that dries, and then it's heated, and of course the gum arabic comes away like a sugar lift, and then it's etched. So you get a positive, negative, a bit like photography. You remember you're staring into the bath, you don't send the next thing, you see the image coming right into your face before you. So this is great. I really enjoy these Flocksia swifts. They're endangered, but they're in small numbers. But some places you might see 100. They're the fastest flying bird in the world in level flight. Okay. Is the swift. Now birds can stoop or plummet down faster, like a stone. You can throw a stone faster. But they're amazing birds. So they're not related to swallows, but they're like swallows. And but one other thing about them, they never land. They'll either fly in the air or they come up under the eaves in your house. We have some near where I live, and then they migrate back to southern Africa for the winter. And they stay in the air mostly all the time, except they come to land to breed, and that's about it. They even sleep on the wing. Wow. Amazing. We think we're good. It's great. What else have I done? Well, I've been showing into the Arctic stuff, but I spent a few summers in the high Arctic. Maybe it's not. Did I have some?
Was this a residency?
Yeah. No, I was with a Brent Goose study group. This is the Brent Goose here. And then they come from Canada, our Brent geese. We were studying the breeding behaviour of the Brent geese. So we're camped out on an Arctic island, uninhabited island. But I did a whole series on that, and then I did another series on the famous Lord Franklin. I don't see it here, right? All these on clips in here. So the ice was melting out at the time, and again, we can straight away think of global warming and what's happening now. This is called sundogs. The ice, and this is called autumn herd. It's a muskox herd. They're the native animals there. They live there all the time, winter, summer. And they're a bit like buffalo, but they're much smaller. But they're nice. They're friendly. But see what they do? They're in groups again. They go home eat when I was the first human perhaps they ever saw. They get into a group, like people do. If there's if there's a car crash or something happens on the street, people get into groups, and if there's something in the air, people stare and look up and point up. Next thing they're all standing together. So I enjoyed that part of it. But they were great trips. And I think that's yeah, the Franklin stuff is a bit ghoulish, but it's all about those people who lost their lives trying to cut away to the Northwest Passage. But it's interesting, and you can Google it and read all about it. It's interesting. It was an interesting time in history in 1845, when they were taking ships through the Northwest Passage, or so they thought, but the ships sank and all 129 people died. So it was a huge disaster at the time. Almost like now space, people are they're not dying in space, but people are going out into space. Some have died. But not on that scale, not 129 people. A terrible tragedy at the time. But it was happening in the area we were with the geese. So I sort of got tagged onto that and read more about it. And I am interested in exploration. A number of the people were from Ireland, like the Shacklins and of Antarctica, and, Captain McClure and Captain McClintock, they were Irish. Captain Keller was Irish. So there was a lot of interest locally as well, which is great.
Oh. Okay, well, thank you, Vincent. Maybe for the
Pleasure.
end, can you tell us, if there is one that you can single out, what is your favorite type of bird to depict or watch?
Gosh, it's hard. I have to say it depends on time of year. The swifts are away. They're here now. It's very exciting because they're doing all their flying around and they're very nice to watch. Then in the winter time, there's a toss up between the rooks and the ravens and so on. The crow family and of course the starlings. I suppose starlings are high up there, and they come. They do their murmurations in the autumn time. They start about October, November, right through to March. So they take up a lot of my time. But it's hard to beat the rooks. They're very entertaining, and also they're almost in your face all the time. The common rook, it's this guy here. They're in the streets now. They're everywhere. They're like a gull. They want your bread and they want to peck around the lawn or whatever. They're very friendly. A lot of these birds have geared up to live in cities, like the gulls on the rooftops. People are going crazy about the gulls on the rooftops. Keep me awake all night. But there's a rooftop that's a place to nest. Why not? The crows, you're feeding your cat or your dog. Oh, there's all that food. That looks great. And of course, the starling is always kind of present as well. So there's always something to watch. So I have to say, it waxes and wanes in different times of year when I focus in on the swifts, the rooks, the starlings, and lots of other birds as well. Geese, of course, and just the robin in the garden. So can't beat that.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Vincent.
Pleasure. Thanks.